everyone, welcome back to our speaking test series. Today we have a fresh new bunch of questions from early this month, early this week. Okay, let's see what we have for part one. Okay, questions about movies. That's really fun. That's obviously super simple. I don't think this should be difficult for anyone, really. Okay, do you go to the cinema? I don't really go nowadays, obviously. Since March 2020, we haven't been outside basically, except for, rare cases. But, it's odd because me and my mom, we just begun, enjoying going out and going to the cinema even. I remember the last movie we watched in a cinema hall was this horror movie. I forgot the name already, but it was a remake of if you've seen, I think it's called The Ring or The Grudge, I don't remember, but it's basically an American remake of a Japanese horror movie. Those were really big, in the early 2000s. So we saw a remake of a remake, which is really stupid now that I think about it. But we had fun. But yeah, sadly, obviously because of the threat of the virus, we really haven't gone out. So I kind of miss that, to be honest. What kind of movies do you like to watch? Well, I personally love horror movies. I love silent movies. I love black and white movies. I love pre-code Hollywood. I also really enjoy art films and indie films and 70s giallo. These are Italian horror movies, kind of like they're not super well made. They're kind of cheesy, but I enjoy them. I really do. And I love foreign movies, especially. I think just a couple months ago I watched this movie. I don't remember if it was a couple months ago or last year, but it was entirely in Russian. Now obviously I'm still learning the language, so it's not like I understood everything, but I understood quite a lot of the content, and that was really fun. I just any opportunity I get to watch a foreign movie, I just grab that opportunity. Especially like a couple years ago, I watched Amelie again. If you don't know what that movie is about, you really should go check it out because it's so hilarious. Well, it's not really hilarious. I just find it's a very it's a very quaint, a very cute movie. It was launched like 20 years ago, obviously. So that was when I was a child. I watched it for the first time, and now as an adult, I watched it again, and it really made me want to learn French. And I did. I've actually enrolled in a French course. What did you enjoy watching when you were young? Okay, so like ever since I was a child, I've loved horror movies, even though I was like maybe like 6 years old, 7 years old, and parents don't usually let their kids watch horror movies, but mine did, and so that was fun. Of course, I had nightmares and stuff. But overall, I've never really been stopped from consuming that kind of content. Obviously, some things are off limits when you're that young, but we had amazing. We would go to the cinema every weekend, in fact, and on the TV as well, there were so many channels that ran like world movies. And even as a child, like even as when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, we'd have some foreign movie from like Iran or France or whatever, Poland, and it was just running on the television, and I just watch it through the subtitles. A lot of people hate subtitles, but I don't mind them. I honestly kind of enjoy watching a movie that's in another language. But yeah, horror movies of any kind from any era. Even if it's from like 1920, right back then, movies didn't really have sound, and I find that older movies, are actually much better than newer ones. I'm not saying anything about the quality really. I'm just saying that I like, the aesthetic choices, and even when I was younger, I always felt like, oh my god, older movies are so much cooler. Has your taste in movies changed with age? I'm not really. I'm still, a big horror buff. That's the same. But of course, my tastes have, I would say, evolved, matured. I can appreciate an indie film. I can appreciate art movies. Of course, as a child, you're not expected to understand such things, right? Because it wouldn't make sense to a child. But I've recently begun to really be interested in that kind of stuff. And it can be kind of vague, kind of odd at times, but I find that I really enjoy that kind of cinema. So, of course, my tastes have evolved, they have changed, but I still, like, even when I was 8 years old, if you told me, let's go watch a horror movie, and if you told me now, let's go watch a horror movie, my reaction would still be the same. Okay, let's see what we have for part two. Right. Talk about a toy you enjoyed playing with as a child. Please say what it was, when did you get it, who gave it to you, and explain why you liked it so much. Okay, so I mean, I've had tons and tons of toys as a child, and I had so many toys that my mom would, like tell me sometimes, hey, why don't we give your older toys to, like underprivileged kids, right? And when I was a child, I was very selfish. I'm kind of ashamed of saying this, but I was a very selfish child. I hated the idea of anybody else taking what I owned. I was super possessive, so I'd always throw a crying fit, if she mentioned something like that. And of course, I mean, as a girl growing up, you always have, your typical dolls and, your little household sets. But what I really enjoyed was this. It was like this mechanic type of game. I know, a very weird choice for a girl, but thankfully my parents didn't mind. So it's I forgot the name. I think it was even called Mechanics, and I think my parents got it for me when I don't know. I probably did well in school, and I don't know when they got it. I mean, it was like this is like we were talking about a time that was like 20 years ago, maybe even more than that. So they had these parts, like bolts and screws and nuts and like little planes, with holes in them, and you can tie things together, and you can make things out of them. They had wheels, they had things you could construct like a little box or a house or stuff like that. And I really enjoy. I would like spend hours just creating random stuff, like even if it didn't make sense. Once I remember that I made this kind of trolley kind of thing. Of course, now that I think about it, it was actually kind of stupid. I mean, it looked funny, but I was so excited, because I made a trolley. You could put things onto that, and you can just, drag the trolley, because it had wheels and stuff, right? It was so cool for me. So I, made that, and I hid it, and I was like, I showed it to my mom, and I told her, look at what I made. Look at this thing. It's so cool, right? And she was like, yeah, wow, that's amazing. As usual, as parents always do. So that was fun. I think I still have that somewhere, I think, in our bedroom. I don't know where it is exactly. I mean, I've probably lost, half of the pieces, but I love that game. And we had a similar one, in fact. It was like Lego blocks, obviously. That kids love that stuff, and I did too. But I lost, so many of the pieces, and then, you kind of lose interest as a child pretty quickly. But I think I always enjoyed, creating actual objects. Instead of just like playing with like a doll or something, which is kind of boring. I mean, you can do a lot of things with the hair and the clothes, which I did, but then I would just get bored because there was just so many things I could do. But with these, like sets where you can create things, and I would spend hours just making little boxes, little homes, and creating these little things, and I would then show it to my mom. Then I would destroy the thing, and then I'd make something new again. So I think that was a great way. It's a great way. When you think about it as an adult, you think that, wow, that's amazing. I mean, your child can be occupied with this thing for hours and hours, and like you don't even have, like, they're not going to bother you and be like, oh, I'm bored, mom, please entertain me, or something like that. And it's great because it's better than just plonking your kid down in front of a television. Obviously, they get to learn actual skills. I think that's really brilliant. In fact, if I was a parent, I would probably get my child something like that as well, regardless of whether they're a girl or boy. That really doesn't matter. It's a great toy, and it makes you think. I think that's really important, that when you have that kind of a toy, you're thinking, okay, what else can I do? Or, oh, I'm confused, what do I do here? This thing isn't fitting into this part. Really get to use all those skills, so that's really good. Let's see what we have for part 3. Okay, do you think it's good for children to play with toys? Yes, obviously. Childhood is the only time in your life when you're going to be, completely free of responsibilities. And then, of course, when you're like super old, when you're, retired and stuff. But that happens like so much later in life. And it's not always guaranteed, right? But your childhood is there with you. And you should have that joy of, having a bunch of toys, being able to play with them. Also, obviously, I mean, yeah, I think kids should also go outside and play. That's really important. Toys are obviously a very indoor kind of thing, but a mixture of both should be that would be ideal, because You learn so many things when you're playing with a toy. It's not just like, playing is not like a waste of time, right? Knowledge isn't really just only found in books. Too often, some types of parents are very rigid and they think that, oh no, my kid should only, look at a book and, do their homework and whatever. But you learn so many things when you're playing with something, or even if it's like you're playing with clay or whatever. You're working on your dexterity skills. You're working on, for example, I had this game and you had to make words. It wasn't Scrabble, but it was this something else. It was a board, and you would have to place chips on the board to make new words, right? So, I mean, you learn so many things that way, and it's fun. So, the child doesn't even think like, oh, I'm studying, or oh, I'm learning something, right? They don't think that they're learning. They don't think that they're studying, right? But they are. They are, in fact, in, that kind of way. And even if it's not like word building, any kind of game, right? You learn so many skills that you need as an adult when you're a child through these games. So I'm all for it. What things should parents consider before buying toys for the children? This depends. One thing that I'm really kind of in favor of as I grow older and learn more about these things is it's really important not to have plastic in your toys. That's obviously a tall order because almost every single toy nowadays has plastic in it, and it's really difficult. I can understand. Obviously, plastic is cheap, and this might not be an option for every single parent, but whenever possible, it might be best to substitute with wooden toys, wooden dolls, fabric, and other non-toxic things. Because I mean, I know that it's not something that's easy to do, because obviously wooden toys tend to be expensive, yes, but it's worth it when you think you don't want to expose your children to all these chemicals and stuff. And also they have to be age appropriate. You don't want to give a toy that's like super simple and not challenging, right? It has to be somewhat challenging, because that's when it starts to even be fun. Other than that, of course, there's the usual concerns like choking hazards and really tiny parts for young children. That's always super dangerous, and you never know, because kids put everything in their mouths, right? Especially if they're really young kids. With older kids, it's not that big of a deal, but you still need to be careful that, okay, this is it's not like toxic. If even if you do put it in your mouth, the color or whatever, it's not going to make you sick, right? And if it doesn't have sharp edges, and just general safety precautions of that nature. Besides toys, what other things in the house do children usually play with? I mean, if you've ever observed a kid, you'll know they play with everything. It doesn't matter if it's a piece of cloth on the floor. It doesn't matter if it's an empty cardboard box. I think kids are very much like cats in that way. Because you'll buy your cat an expensive toy, but the cat will prefer playing with your cardboard box. So really, it's cool that they find enjoyment in pretty much everything. They don't necessarily have to have expensive toys or flashy gadgets, because what's really important at that young age is that they have to have something which stimulates their imagination, right? That, oh, this is a cardboard box, okay, but I actually think it's a fort, right? I can put pillows inside it. I can cover the outside with a blanket. I can even paint the outside, right? I mean, that's really important. If everything is just handed on a platter to a child, then when will he or she learn to use his or her own intelligence, his or her own skills, his or her own imagination, creativity? That's the point. That's the whole point of giving them toys. So it doesn't have to be something you bought from a store. It can even just be something you already have. It can be your clothes. It can be, I remember when we were kids, we'd lay out our umbrellas. We'd open up our umbrellas and we'd pretend we're on the beach, right? And we'd lay like two or three umbrellas side by side, and we'd put like this huge blanket over all of the umbrellas, and then we'd pretend that we were like in some kind of fort or something, right? And so I mean, when you're a child, your imagination is really so good that you can find a lot of joy in even like tiny things like that. Why do parents buy toys for their kids? I mean, obviously, it gives you a lot of joy to see your child enjoying something, right? Just I don't have kids, but obviously I work with kids, and it's always fun to see them enjoying something. I kind of compare it to, like, when you have an animal pet and you give them a toy and they're just going crazy over it. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to see them having fun. And of course, with children, they even learn things, right? Like I pointed out earlier, toys are super important for their development. And it's not just that they're having fun, it's also that they're learning at the same time. How to use their fingers, how to balance themselves, what colors are like, which colors go well together, textures, taste, feel, all these things. In fact, there's really good toys nowadays that it's like I don't know exactly what it's called, obviously, because it was a long time since I saw it, but they have these ladders, and what's it called? Is it called a pick triangle or something of that sort? I don't know, but it's this, I think it's a Waldorf toy or something like that. I don't remember, again, I could be wrong. But I've known parents that had these things, and they can turn them into a bed, they can turn them into a tent, they can turn it into like this slide kind of thing. It's so much fun, and I think it really, like I said, stimulates the child, right? It helps them think outside the box, especially if it's a toy that's unconventional. And obviously, every parent wants their kid to, be successful, learn things, improve themselves, be the best possible version of themselves that they can be. That's kind of the goal, of parenthood, right? So it makes perfect sense that they would buy them toys. Okay, that's all for today. You can check back in next week where I'll be doing an essay and I'll be doing another speaking test. All right then, bye bye for today.